The views and opinions expressed in the following program are those of the hosts and guests, and not necessarily those of the staff or management of Worldwide Digital Broadcasting Corporation.
Rise! Get yourselves together! Rise! Stand up and live your life! Rise! Get yourselves together! Rise! Hands up high!
Welcome to the Rise Above Show. I am Joe Peroni.
I'm Heidi Mancini.
Do we have announcements today?
We just want to take a minute to thank Jay Young from City Athletic for sponsoring our show, the Rise Above Show. Again, I want to make sure that I say this, that we have a couple spots available for sponsorship. So if you're interested, get on board before we get rid of those spots. So I just want to take a minute for that, Joe. What else did I want to say?
We have new microphones.
We have new
I feel
microphones.
Like a real rock
I'm
star
looking
right
at this
now.
microphone
Great.
going, this thing is big. I don't know where to put it. If I should put it here, move it over here, or should we go with it? But I like it. It's cool.
I'm going to do the Roger Dolce thing. I want to swing it.
You want to swing it?
Let's see if I can hit John from here.
So that's about all I have to say.
Okay, so as I've mentioned in the past, our show with our guests and our listeners, I like it to be one big family. And so, as you know, if you're a loyal listener, we had a guest on a couple of weeks ago, January 12th, actually. We had Joey Maxwell on, and we talked about his dog, Maverick. And we have an update on that. Oh,
Yes.
God. I was trying to do that. Wow, okay, let me...
His dog passed away a few days ago on the 22nd of January. I believe it was the date. So
It was
Max
Saturday night.
Maverick passed away. So he his cancer, he finally died.
Yeah, so he had his third bout with cancer. And I did talk to Joey this week. I'm not going to tell you what we talked about because that was a private conversation, but most likely he would like to be back on the show, and then we can go over that. We could talk about how to overcome these types of things and how to grow from these types of things. And so we will definitely continue that story. So we do want to offer our condolences to the Maxwell family, Joey and Allison, and of course Maverick and his more than 14,000 fans, which has been actually really unbelievable. I was so touched by the story, and I'm thinking, I am not alone. Like this story this week, I noticed was in CBS News. It was in People magazine. The American Kennel Club came out with a story also. I mean, this story is...
Well, I think this story touches
big deal.
everybody's hearts too, Joe, because so many people have pets, from cats to dogs to frogs to fish to, whatever it is that we fall in love with, and we become attached to them because they're so unconditional. And the relationship between us and our pets is different than, the people relationship. And when they don't outlive us, unfortunately. They have shorter lifespans than we do. So in our lifetimes, we're going to say so long, probably more than one time, especially if you get more than one pet.
Right. And there's so much to be learned here. As a therapist, too, I read all the books, and then I have talks with other counselors, and we always come up with this thought that as human beings, if we're strong and functional, we should be almost totally internally validated. Like, we don't need anything from the outside world, right? We should be these autonomous creatures. And just John just a second ago was talking about his cat, and it's like, when you come home and you're greeted by another living thing that just loves the fact that you're there, I want to know the therapist that actually thinks that they're saying something to somebody when you don't need outside validation. Like, who are you, and where do you live? Like, what kind of human being are you? Like, I mean, I get it when it's excessive, right? Like, we need a certain amount of approval from other people to feel good. But let's be honest, like, as human beings, we need outside or external validation. I mean, I would not be in a relationship with you if I didn't get anything from you that made me feel good.
Well,
you know?
they're so unconditional when you walk in. Like I came home before from work, and I was on the fence with whether I was going to walk them before the show or I'll do it later tonight. Well, you know me, later tonight. By the time I get done, it's 7 o'clock at night, and they're okay. I gotta get up at 4 a.m. I don't know. So I walk in the door, and there's the two dogs. You were upstairs in the shower or whatever you were doing, and they both look at me like, "Are we going now?" Because this morning, of course, I slept in. Thursday mornings, I don't have training clients, so I decide on Thursdays is my rest day to sleep until 6 a.m. That's a sleeping in. And so they didn't have their walk this morning, so I was like, oh, okay, let's go. So out the door we went, and they were all happy, and it just takes that little tiny little bit,
that's great.
just a little walk, that's it, and they're as happy as can be. And I think that's why our pets are so amazing.
Oh yeah.
They don't ask a lot. They just
No, but wow, do they give?
They give.
And one more thing about this external validation, because it's such a big thing in therapy, and I kept thinking about it all week. You know what? If I admit to needing some external validation, right, and having good feelings from the outside kind of thing, I'm not alone. With this story, there's at least 14,000 other people that are standing behind me or in front of me saying yes.
Beside you.
Beside me. And saying, isn't that true? So that's why I think, a lot of therapists kind of have it wrong. So with that in mind, if you don't mind, I'd like to read this. These are not my words, by the way. I think I got this from CBS, actually, CBS News, or maybe it's People Magazine. I kind of forgot. I don't want to be wrong here, but let me see if I can. Okay, let me see if I can read this. The sweet, smiley canine Maverick passed as peacefully and painlessly as possible at his family's home. Joey Maxwell, Maverick's owner of 8 years, says he and his wife returned from a night at the theater Saturday to a joyful Maverick who barked happily as they prepared his dinner. He ate a big meal and playfully barked for more. Allison and I, this is Joey talking, Allison and I left Maverick in the living room to finish his seconds as we got ready for bed. About 15 minutes later, we came back into the living room to get Maverick. During that time, Maverick had laid his head down and simply went to sleep. And just like that, it was all over. He had waited until we got home so he could enjoy one last meal with us and tell us goodbye. It was as peaceful and painless as could be. Since Maverick's passing, the Maxwells have taken comfort in the tens of thousands of messages they've received from all around the world. Maverick inspired people to start each day excited for the possibilities that lay ahead, no matter what obstacles that stood in their way. Our hope is that he can continue to do that each and every day. Because of that hope, we will continue posting Maverick stories and pictures on his Facebook page. While Maverick is no longer with us, he continues to be an inspiration and a reminder of how much we should all love one another each and every day. And I also want to, this is my words here, I just want to add that Maverick was a rescue dog. So if anybody out there is considering to get a dog, I would never tell anybody what to do, but I would hope that you would consider saving the thousands of dogs that need to be saved. And with that, we'd like to play a little video of Maverick, and we'll be right back after this. So today we want to continue on a really difficult topic. Last week we were talking about PTSD, and it was more towards the military PTSD. But what I'd like to talk about is what's called CPTSD, which technically is not in the DSM, so you don't hear it very much, but the C stands for complex. Why? Because it's complex. It's very, very difficult to see or to know where this trauma came from, because it's usually very early in your childhood, and it's also very persistent, and to a point where you're just starting to develop your personality, and in your family of origin, you're told that the things that are going on are not happening. In other words, the feeling that you have is not correct, and I'll describe more of this on and on, but it's extremely difficult to deal with, to the point that some people can go through their whole life and never actually know why they're doing the things that they're doing. So it's very difficult to know why or how you were traumatized in the first place. But when you start to understand, this whole new world opens up to you, and you start to say, well, okay, that's why I am who I am. That's why I keep dating the same types of people over and over again, and I keep blaming them. That's why I go out into the world and I'm still angry for the same things all the time, expecting the world to change when it's not. It's you that has to change. Right. So how did all that stuff happen in the first place?
And you manage it. You know, like people go through their lives and they manage it. You get through managing your feelings or your pain or whatever. You get through the day. You figured out. I thought the C stood for child PTSD, childhood, not complex. To me, I would prefer to say that, only because
and you can.
I think that's where everything starts. And again, I think everybody has it to some degree in their childhood, because and the parents don't have to be bad parents.
No.
Parents do the best that they can do. It could be another adult in your life. It could be a teacher. It could be a neighbor. It could be a brother or sister. It could be a cousin. It could be somebody in your life that has some kind of influence over you, that could do something or say something to change the way you think about certain things.
Right, or your core beliefs.
And as a child, you're always told, don't say anything. If you say anything, you be quiet, or you're scared of the adults, so you're quiet and you don't say anything. So you learn early on how to be quiet.
Right.
And that's why when you hear people say, I don't like confrontation, and I don't think they mean that. I think that they're scared from early on that they don't want confrontation, because they could never have a confrontation. They could never have a conversation without a confrontation.
True.
So you're quiet.
Yeah, a lot of it starts from when we're trying to manage our parents or our caregivers' feelings. And that's impossible. We can't do that. So let me give you an example. Maybe it'll make it.
I'll give you
easier.
one too when you're done.
Okay, I'll give you an example. And this is generational, by the way. For example, right? Like, I've got nothing negative to say about my mother. To me, she is the greatest person ever, and she can do no wrong. But let's be human now, and I could talk a little more freely. Now, as soon as I said that, that's a trauma, because I'm not allowed to speak freely until after she dies, right? So what does that tell you about me? Don't make fun of me. But that is a trauma type of behavior. Yeah. That already you're saying, you're very passive aggressive, aren't you? Because
I've told you you're passive aggressive.
Well, right, and that's
many times.
Where does it start? So here's something. My mother's mother, my grandmother, was an alcoholic. So my mother, at a very young age, had to get used to having a human being in the house that was totally erratic. She didn't know if she was going to be nice, angry, mean, not there emotionally or physically. She didn't know if she was going to get hit, not hit. You get what I'm saying? When you're a child and you are basically a prisoner of war because you are stuck in a situation, in a place, a house, apartment, whatever, you can't get out, but you have to deal with that crazy monster there. Again, I would never say that if these people were alive. I can't say crazy monster to people that cared about me, right? But let's be honest. If you are drinking and you are violent and you're angry and you are unpredictable and you cause a disorganized home, you're a crazy monster to a child. And that is very hard, and one of the reasons why most trauma stays unresolved, because it is one of the most difficult things in the world to admit that the people who loved you were not God, and they had a lot of problems.
It's hard
and it
to
passes
say.
down.
When I meet with the therapist, I say it's very hard for me to say these things about my mother.
That might be the hardest thing. It's harder to
She
talk
says,
about her
well,
than it is you.
Yeah, I said, because I don't want to deal with it. You don't want to talk about it. You don't want to make the person that's supposedly your parent look like this evil person.
Mm-hmm.
Because that was a different time too. That was how many years ago? I was 51, so that was 50. We'll say from the time I can remember, maybe 6 years old. That's a long time ago, and things have changed somewhat over a period of time, or I've changed, or I've managed things over my lifetime.
Right.
So, looking at it when you're older.
But it's in some ways it becomes more difficult. Like, the deeper you look, and here's one of the reasons, again, why trauma remains unresolved. It's because it is very painful to look at with yourself. It makes you look your whole life over and go, hold it, the life I was living, was it real? The thoughts that I had, were they really mine? And if I had to look at it, where this stuff came from, 90% of it came from people who loved me. And so it's very difficult to look at. In some ways, you could ask the question, would you like to resolve your trauma? Or would you like to keep your trauma where it is, right? It's like the old, door number one and door number two.
Would want to resolve it, but the thing is most people don't even know their trauma. They're living in trauma. It's like you said before, people will say, I end up in the same situation all the time and it's everybody else's fault. It's hard to look. Most people don't even know they have a problem till they have a problem. I have anger issues and anxiety, high anxiety, that, whatever. And you don't realize that it's an issue till it becomes an issue. And then you're like, why all of a sudden is it an issue? So depending on what part of your life you're in and what you're living and what things you've gone through, those things might start to surface. One of the reasons mine did was because of with some of the things I went through with Ava, being a mom, and looking at my relationship with her.
Yeah, it's still tough, right? So, listen, that's why, this is another reason why I love this show, because we really do draw emotional blood. And whether it's me or it's Heidi, it's 100%. We gotta lay it out on the table. I'm not trying to sugarcoat. Hey, you know what, man?
Yeah,
you're next.
But you're next.
Because
you just look like you needed a hug.
You're not perfect, man. I'm going to question you. I'm going to make you cry. I actually did make you cry on that other show. See? So we all have something.
But our families, this is the thing. One of the things I want to say is our families, they don't want to hear it. And it's very difficult to face your trauma, face whatever issues you have because what I have to realize is that I'm not going to get resolution or admission or an apology or anything like that, because the people that you deal with, they either have selective memory, or because it was so long ago, they may have their trauma that they blank that out themselves because they knew that kind of behavior was not acceptable at the time, and it's a guilt thing, and they feel, as a parent, some of the things that I've had to look at with my daughter, I don't want to look at it, when your kid says to you, well, you did this to me, or you made me feel this way. My natural instinct is to defend myself and say, well, I did it because I was in this part of my life, or I was mad at your father, or, I was frustrated. But the person that's bringing this to our attention, they don't want to hear that. They want to hear, I just say to my daughter, I'm sorry.
Right. But listen, you are taking a very strong, courageous position by even looking at it, saying you're sorry to your daughter, because that's something that most people don't get, because I am not going to get that from my parents. You forget it. And actually,
but it's
not
her
to be mean,
perception.
but you're not going to get it from your parents either.
No, but her perception and what we see is how we, when we have trauma or things come up, it's our perception, and it's a tape loop in our brain that, keeps coming back. And for me to say to her, well, your perception, or you don't understand because you weren't, you were a child. Her perception of what she was exposed to and what she saw and how she lived it is her. It's her. You know, like my mom could say to me, if I said to my mom, I didn't like when you yelled and screamed at me, it scared the shit out of me. And I remember at times being a kid looking in her eyes and thinking that her eyes were like huge. And I was this little kid going, oh my God, like, I'm just going to sit here. I'm not going to say anything to her and it'll go. This will pass. And, you know, to say that to my mom now, she doesn't want to hear it. And then I have siblings. I have my 2 sisters and my brother who they don't remember any of that. But one of the reasons they don't remember a lot of it is because being the oldest, I was moving them out of the room or diffusing the situation somehow. Like, she's going to have a meltdown every second now. Let's go outside and play. Let's go upstairs. So some of it they were exposed to, but I don't know if how much of it. And so it's hard for me too, because I'll try to talk to my sisters about it and they'll say, oh, well, she was like that after her car accident, or, you know, they make excuses. So I don't know how much their lives were traumatized from it. I don't know how much I don't know how they're actually living their lives in their lives, and I don't know their dysfunctions, and I don't know their problems that they're having. I know every single one of us at one point or another did drink and have some kind of, you know, things that we did, you know, when we were younger. But, you know, that makes it difficult too, because I can't get anybody to say, yeah, that did happen and that was not right. And then even if they were to say that to me, I don't think it won't change anything. It won't change the how many years? I would say like 40 years of pushing everything down inside. What's got to happen now is all that stuff's got to come out so you can have a good life, you know, or a functioning normal life. What's a normal life?
But what I can tell you is this, though, and I've noticed this in therapy for other people, or even trying to work on myself. The more awareness you have over the situation, it answers so many questions that you start to say, okay, I understand why this is the way it is. And you could start making heads and tails of your life and why you make the decisions you do and how you feel like you do. Like, you put certain blinders on you, right? Like, you admitted, I think it was last week, that you don't trust people. And it's okay to say that. Just own it and just say that. You don't have to
I trust people to a certain extent. You know, I let them in about as close as I think I can allow them, like, to hear maybe. And then the other hand goes, okay, that's far enough. And because I don't really trust people, because most people are screwed up.
But see, it's funny how you say that. Because
I mean, I'm sorry.
But see, I'm actually the opposite. So we can actually both look at John, and I could say, I'm sure he's a great guy. I totally trust him. You look at him and smile at him and go, I don't know, not so much. But yet, we're in the same place.
But it depends on what level your trust is. My trust level is a heart level. My trust level on a superficial level, I trust people. On a heart level, if I'm letting you into my heart and my life, and I'm going to share my deep, dark secrets with you, most people I don't trust. And you have to be a really special person in my life for me to disclose that to you. And there's people out there that they trust so many people that they talk about everything. They lay it all out there. It doesn't matter who the heck the person is they're talking to. They tell them everything.
Right.
I don't disclose my life to just anybody.
But that's a different type of trauma response, right? Like that also, because whenever you're leaning too far in one direction, you know that that's a trauma response, because normal people don't tell everybody everything. And then other normal people don't have such a distrust. Like, but here's the thing for you, and this is where awareness comes in, and it might actually, it starts the healing process. If you're a child and you're looking at your mother, who is much bigger than you, right? You're like, what, 3? Part of it. And she's violent, she's angry, she's verbally abusive. I know it's hard for you to hear that. Let me finish. I know you don't want to hear it. That's why you're going to stop me now.
No, because I have something to say about the trust thing. There's a difference between trust and attachment.
Listen, I got to call you on it.
I'll explain that.
You're disassociating here.
Okay.
Let me finish. Allow it to be said. It makes it that you're helpless in that moment. You're hopeless in that moment to change it, but you want to change it. You don't know when the next angry word is coming at you. You don't know when the next object is going to be thrown at you. You don't know when the next fist is going to come at you. Not trusting is a response to a really poor environment. It's a survival skill. It's nothing to feel ashamed or bad about. You needed to have that mistrust to save your life. And when you couldn't back up far enough, you disassociate your brain from what you're hearing to where all you see is a mouth move. Am I wrong? It's exactly right. You do it to me every day. The mouth is moving, I'm over here. But that's part of your superpower that you somehow, not consciously, but unconsciously chose to say, this is what I need to do right now to save me. Because you could have gotten angry and just thrown a fist at her. That probably wouldn't work. You would have gotten even more repercussions. So you chose the exact most perfect response you could. Where it becomes difficult is this. When we have a trauma response, it's an alarm system. Now, if we have the door locked, right, and there's an alarm on it, and somebody breaks through, the alarm goes off, it alerts us, we're ready to go. The problem is that when this happens repeatedly when you're younger, the alarm stays on all the time. And when an alarm stays on all the time, it's not working. Because what it's doing is it's just going off. Right. And what happens is, whether there's good people, bad people, no people, you still have a low-level anxiety. Tell me I'm wrong.
And the attachment part of that is, with the trust issue, is that I've never attached myself ever to anybody. Like, I've never totally, again, it's trust, but it's an attachment thing, that I don't attach myself to anybody. I said this to you before, I don't put people on pedestals, when people get, whatever. I've never done that, because I don't, in my way my brain is, at some point in time, people are going to disappoint me, or they're going to do something. So I basically don't attach myself to that. And is something that I want to be better at, that I can be okay to attach myself and still be okay with the unexpectations that are going to be met. Because the other part that happens in there is that we have expectations of people that we put there because of whatever childhoods were, that we want to have the person in our life that treats us a certain way, that loves us unconditionally, that, all that. And so people that you might bring into your life, that you decide that you're going to become intimate with or whatever, then all of a sudden this person, they're not meeting your expectations, because they're a person too. They have their own wounds, they have their own baggage, their own trauma maybe that they're carrying. So now, that creates another snowball of problems, because now then you go into another relationship, because this person isn't, you attached yourself to it, maybe you trusted this person, and now they're not living up to your expectations. So the other thing, one of the things is the trust with the attachment and no expectations, to just let things go the way that they're supposed to go, and trust that not everybody's gonna be hurtful.
Right, because you actually do enter into a relationship with expectations. You're expecting them to be bad and to screw you over. So, not to be mean.
Well, I expect when I get into a relationship with somebody, for them to treat me well and to treat me good.
Okay, no,
I don't want to be treated anything but good. I want to be treated that way in any relationship, whether it's a friendship, intimate relationship. It's the attachment part of the trust that comes into it, that I don't attach myself to you for everything.
Right. And listen, part of that's healthy.
And part of it's healthy, but part of it's not.
But unconsciously, we all want to love and be loved. But what we put out there for people is not necessarily that. So, not to pick on you, because you can pick on me all you want. We'll go to me too. But your part, you chose somebody to be with for 20 years or so that has absolutely no emotional connection to, I don't want to be, whatever, but to anything, to his daughter, to you, to the world, to his work, yes, but people at his work, no. So, but think about that. What you really want is to be loved and to be able to give love and to receive love, but you chose someone who basically gave you a type of security, because he wasn't going to push your buttons by loving you, because that is what you go, oh, I don't trust, that's too close for me. That's very, very typical.
But in that part in your life, though, like, if you think about a shell, at that point in my life, when I look back on that, there was the perfect person for me at that time, because I didn't want to have an emotional connection with anybody. I wanted to be, it was for security. I wanted a roof over my head. I wanted a place to stay, and I wanted food and heat. I didn't want to go without those things. And he provided all that.
Yes.
But as I started to mature, I was 20 when I got married. And as I started to mature and going into having, when I finally went to beauty school and I accomplished a goal that I set out to do, regardless of what people had said to me, you don't want to be a hairstylist, you'll never make any money, blah, 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 whatever. Then most of my awakening happened. I mean, I knew early on that probably it wasn't going to work, just because, you start to know after a while it's not going to work. But when my daughter was born, that was like a huge,
It's okay.
it's like a big thing opens up. Because you go, now, I can't be closed. I can't be closed. I got to be open, because there's this little person there. And I mean, when they're born, they don't know anything yet. But as a mom, as soon as you see that baby, that you're like, oh my God, I'm responsible for this human being.
Right.
So the love that you have to learn to open yourself up to, you have to. It's like you're forced to. It's like somebody shoves your face in it and they go, so you open up. So I opened up to what I was supposed to do with this baby. However, it was detrimental to my marriage even more so, because then I realized I'm with somebody that they're so emotionally, and I don't fault him for that, and I don't want to put Ava's dad down in any way, because it's still her father. She's part of him. So that being said, she should love her father, and for whatever he gives her in her life. I don't know what that is, but I know for me that was a huge turning point for me for change. And then another one for me was you.
Yeah.
So you can kind of go through your life, and you can be the kind of person that you can kind of hole yourself up in a room if you want.
But how amazing is it that having a baby starts to force you to look at your trauma in a way? Like, you didn't say, "Oh, I'm gonna look at my trauma now," but you said, "I need to open up."
When you're raising a baby too, when you look at the baby, you know that all their needs are going to come from you, and all you feel at that moment is unconditional love. It's probably I'll say for me, because I'm looking at this little baby going, she's going to love me whether I'm fat, tall, skinny, pretty, old. I'm her mother. She's not going to be judging me because I maybe didn't do something right at some point in my life. All she's going to do is they look to you for their needs, their food, their love, their guidance, and all the things that they need to live. So you're kind of awakened. But when you're raising a baby too, you consciously say, I cannot do that to my baby. Like things that were done to me as a child, I cannot do that to her. So again, now the things that you may have experienced as a child, you go, when you feel the anger or you feel the anxiety or you feel the fear, I remember like totally freaking out if she got hurt. I mean, freaking out to the point where I would scare the crap out of her, and it was like, wait a minute, it's not that big of it. So I had to learn how to be calm in the moment,
right,
and
get
it together and middle it, somehow. So you learn about some of your childhood stuff comes out when you're raising a baby. Because you definitely, so the negative things that you experience, you definitely don't want to smack your kid. You don't want to be in their face every second. I had my dad around at the time. He was a good influence, and he was a good person to have in my life too, for my daughter to have around, a gentle man, So I think there was increments in my life where, you can manage. You manage it, something happens, a little bit of that shell opens up. Then it's open for a while, and then something else might happen. And I know when you came into my life too, that was another moment for me that it was where I actually really could say I opened up to somebody for the first time and shared my life, shared who I was. I was fat when I met you. I was not in shape. I stopped smoking. I was not mentally, healthy. I was, just working out and talking to my trainer, but over time, you became my partner, and I was able to open up that part of my heart, to a different type
But
of.
what a trigger it must be when somebody actually calls you back. Think about that. In other words, they want to actually talk to you. Like, think about that process of dating. You know, because one thing that stood out, and I wrote it down just so people understand why I write stuff, so I can go back to it. Very interesting what you said about your ex. I married him for security, and so I could have heat. Like, that really stands out. Like, that's usually not in the list of things that we want when we're picking a partner. So, I mean, I'm going to take a stab in the dark here. Like, when you were with your mother, I mean, was she drinking? Did she not pay the bills? Were you sitting in a house in Buffalo in the cold with no heat? Well, yeah, okay, so how am I doing here?
No, but I'm just saying.
Because you understand where I'm going, right?
When
Like,
you go through some rough stuff and you finally say, you know, I met this person, they're not so bad. You know, he likes me. He's secure. You know, at that point in my life, I wanted some security. And it wasn't money security. It was I didn't want to feel that I was going to be in the cold, or, you know, I didn't have food or something, you know. And so at that point in my life, it worked. It worked for me for a while. It was a survival thing. And then as time goes on, and like I said, my daughter was a turning point for me in a lot of ways. And I don't want to get into all of that right now because it's not what we're talking about. But for me personally, it was a great time for me in my life for me to open up and realize that I have feelings. You know, they're real.
Exactly. And this is part of the trauma that we're talking about. If you come from a certain family that's dysfunctional, maybe very negative socioeconomic background, in other words, you're poor, let's just be honest, you're poor, you don't have a lot of choices. You can't tell people what you want without the fear of them feeling bad. Like, if you're very in tune and you're more, let's say, emotionally caring person, and some people are born a little more emotionally caring than others, you're more likely to experience trauma. Like, I could look at my mother by the time I was 6 years old and go, yeah, I'm not going to ask for seconds here because I know we don't have food, and I don't want to make her feel bad. Like, it's not
But
that I
you're
was
still
judging.
like that. You know,
Yeah,
you're
tell
still
everybody.
like
That's
that
okay. Yeah,
with
no,
a lot of stuff.
it's
You know,
totally
you're afraid
true.
to ask for what you need, which is really frustrating because when
For me or for you?
For me sometimes, because I'll say, "What do you need? What do you want? What can I do?" It's great. It's
You know
fine.
what my answer
it's
is?
good. It's perfect.
I'll tell you what my answer is.
I have everything I need. That's what you say,
That's what I verbalize. You're right.
but that's not what's true.
But the actual inner feeling is, and now this is horrible because I don't do this as much anymore, but the actual, when you get the core belief is, I will make myself as small as I need to be so I can still have you around. Think about that. If my mother's there and she's trying to make the bills, I want to eat as little as possible. I want only one shirt, maybe a couple of things of socks. I don't want to take up any extra space in terms of money or an emotional stuff. That's why if you said, hey, how were you in school? I said, most of the time, straight A's. Because I didn't want to give her any extra stress. And everybody like, oh, Joe's great. He's straight A's. President of his school, by the way. You wouldn't think I'd be the president. I was the president of my school.
Shy now, president.
Even though I was shy.
Would they call you the shy president?
As a matter of fact, I still remember this. You know why? No, but I still remember this. First day after being elected, they said, Joe, you have to say...
Hello.
No, really. I had to sit there as president and say something to the effect of, I don't know the exact words, but I had to say, hear ye. We're all gathered today and at this time, and I'd have to tell somebody to take the minutes. They'd have to write down the time. And the teacher said, okay, you have to do this, and here's your script. And I said, I can't do it. So what do you mean? You just did a speech. You were elected,
oh my God.
and now you can't do it. It's like, because now I'm thinking too much, and I didn't say that. I didn't know how to, but I was like, can I impeach myself now? But I did it.
I wish they had Twitter back then.
Yeah, if they had Twitter back then, it would be great. I'm just right. Sad.
And he's so shy, because I remember when I used to train with him too back in the day, and he'd be so quiet, and I used to come out with some slingers here and there, just to see if I could get him cranked up. And he would just, I'd be like, forget it. And he would never say anything inappropriate or anything, whatever, but I would. Once in a while, I don't know what I would say. I would say something, and he'd be like, okay, let's move on to the next exercise. I'm like, okay.
It's funny. We're never going to get to this.
I know, sorry, Joe.
No, but it's true.
Can we just move on to the next exercise, please? Oh, do we have to? Can't we stay here? And he'd be like...
It's totally funny. Okay, so we'll never get to this today, okay? We'll have to get
We'll do another show on it.
No, we'll have to...
We'll do a couple shows on this.
Listen,
because
if you only...
people love this stuff, and they need to know.
If you only did shows on childhood trauma, we would never have to talk about anything else, honestly. Because really, and I can give you reasons for this, but here's just a quick list I did in about 20 minutes. This has over this has over 40 things on it. No one's hearing me now. These are about 40 different signs that you may have that will lead you to say that you have unresolved trauma. Now, there's a lot more, and I did this in like a very short amount of time. And it's interesting, some of the things you say, like one of the things you said before is actually in my top 3. Oh. A neurotic amount of being naive. Mm-hmm. Think about that for people out there. This is really important because I hear this all the time. Well, I know I have a friend who was punched, so it's not as bad because I only got yelled at and I was told I was a piece of garbage and I would never amount to anything all my life. That's naive. Like, you're trying to make it okay. It's not okay. Or the other person, I got punched, but I have a friend who their father put out cigarettes on their arm.
Well, you minimize it.
And so what you're doing is you're trying to be neurotic, not trying, but you are neurotically naive because you can't face the fact that your caregivers, the people possibly who gave birth to you, that gave you life, were so screwed up that they've done so many horrific things. And it doesn't always have to be horrific, by the way. It could be little slights here and there that you just don't know. Like, okay, here's little Johnny. No, Johnny, we don't have enough money for him to play sports. No, you can't do that. No, you can't do that. Listen, I went through school, even through college, I didn't use books my first 4 years of college. I didn't have money for that. Somebody's like, wow, you must be really smart. Well, you have to become that if you don't have money for books. That's just the way it is. It's just a survival skill. And it goes on. There's a ton of them. Being a people pleaser. Well, why would you be a people? If you are a people pleaser, and you'll know, ask yourself, people out there listening, do you really people please? Do you worry too much about other people? Where does that come from? People pleasers start off by being parent pleasers. I'm a number one example, right? Like, from the very beginning, my mother or my grandmother was an alcoholic, like I said. My mother went through a very traumatic time. Her father was in the Marines. So he was never around. Actually, he died in Japan, as a matter of fact. He was not around. So there was no father figure. There was unstableness at home. My mother would tell me stories. Now, I knew these stories by the time I was 8 years old. Now, I'm not saying my mother she didn't have a man around either, so she confides in me. Now, I'm the man of the house. Man of the house, I'm 8. So how good am I doing? So not too good. But she would tell me the stories that when her mother was passed out, she would go and shave her head. Because she thought, well, embarrass her, that she wouldn't go to the bar down the street. And of course that doesn't work. And there were times when she would be with her friends, because we used to play in the streets back then, or even before, obviously it was my mother. Her mother would come back stumbling drunk from the local bar, and she'd have to be embarrassed. And so what she learned to do was, I need to protect my mom. I need to make everything perfect for my mom so she doesn't drink. What's wrong with me that she needs to drink? If she cared about me, she wouldn't do that and put me in danger. So she's set up for victimhood right there. Who comes in? My father, knight in shining armor, 15 years old. 15, you're thinking, wow, what the heck? My mom was 12. That's when they met. Father comes in, you don't have a real man around the house, which is kind of true. I mean, from what I heard, he was a good man, but he was never home. Dad walks in, oh, I'm going to be the leader. Well, of course you are, because the other leader is an adult, but she's drunk at the bar. So all of a sudden, my mom slides to that. And there you have the start of this whole codependency behavior that I ended up living with. When my parents split up, it wasn't like my mother said, hey, listen, you're cheating on me, you're beating the kids, you're doing this, you need to get out. It was, what do I need to do to keep this man still here? So what do I learn? I learned that if you really love somebody, you will break your back and make yourself as small as you possibly can because there's something wrong with you and you need to hold the relationship together. And so as you go track through, not all of my life, I've met some good people, don't get me wrong, but
I hope so.
but you do run into people that are vampirish, right? They will suck as much as you're willing to give, because if you're a giver and you go, listen, in sports, it works. I'll break my back and I'll do anything it takes to win. Well, you're in a relationship and you have that mindset with someone who's a drug addict. You give it a couple of times because they're going to be cheating on you. They're going to be stealing from you. They're not going to come home. They're going to be doing everything else. And you're going to be like, what can I do for you, please? Why am I not making you happy? And you realize that at some point when you get smart, you go, hold it, where did I learn this really screwed up way to love? Oh yeah, you've been hypnotized basically since birth because you see it over and over and over again. And you go, that's the way you're supposed to be. And then you start to live like that. And it's this revelation when you start to go, oh my God, like, you want to go through some of these unresolved I mean, just I'll say them. I don't have time to explain them. We only have like 5 minutes. But here's some things just to kind of whet your appetite for our next shows.
Whet your appetite. I like that
just
show.
In case. You like the word wet?
Yeah, I
huh?
like it.
Moist.
Moist. Oh my God.
I like that
You know who
word.
hates that word? Amber. I'm going to say this. She's watching the show. Amber watches our show every week, and she told me, stop touching your face. You're always touching your mouth. She hates the word moist. I'm going to say it.
I
Moist,
love that
moist,
word.
moist. That's for you, Amber.
This is Joe's list of, you know, you're a redneck if.
You're ready.
You're moist.
Let me go back just a little bit, and then I'll zip through this if I can. One of the problems is when you're trying to handle unresolved trauma is that, okay, we have the American Psychology Association. Let me try to be nice here, okay? They're trying to make money, okay? They're a business. So what they do is they have this DSM, it's a book of disorders, which really means nothing. They're a clustering of symptoms. It's like saying that something is wrong with my hand. Nothing's wrong with my hand. I lift a lot of dumbbells and barbells, so I have an adaptation. They're called calluses. So when you distrust somebody and then you feel that you kind of want to love somebody, but then when they get close, you kind of back up, I would write down, ooh, you might have borderline personality disorder. You are screwed up from birth. You are like that. Just like I have brown eyes, you have borderline. That doesn't work. Look at me. That doesn't work. It's garbage. That's stupid. Listen, I'm a therapist. I do not diagnose people. You don't label people like that. It's ridiculous. It's stupid. It doesn't work. Do you know how they get all those diagnosis things? They vote on them. It's not like they're sitting there with a microscope and all these things and technology and x-rays and going, ooh, that cell is misformed. It might be cancer. No, they have a bunch of people in a room and they go, you know, I wrote 3 books on borderline. Let's keep it in the DSM so I can get paid. They vote on it. You're not born with it. Do we understand? Okay. Just so you can listen to the next shows about unresolved trauma, just in case you still think you might not have any. Maybe you don't. Maybe you had a perfect life. But here it is. If you have a feeling of learned helplessness or a victim mentality, excessive external validation, are you a people pleaser? Are you neurotically naive? Do you not totally buy into personal responsibility? Reason being, you took personal responsibility for your parents' feelings and it didn't work. So you start to realize that that doesn't work. Are you passive aggressive? Why? Because you need to get stuff done, but you can't show what you're doing in your household because you will be punished hard. So you learn. That's a skill you learn in your home.
Perfectionist.
Are you a perfectionist? Because if I was good enough, my parents wouldn't argue. If I was good enough, my father wouldn't leave. If I was good enough, my mother wouldn't drink. My mother didn't drink. I'm just giving examples. Do you have OCD? Again, I'm trying to make things perfect for you. When somebody comes home, is this house perfect for you? Can I manage your feelings? Okay, so that is, if you have OCD, that doesn't just come out of nowhere. You're not born with it, okay? That's a manifestation of a problem at home. Do you have general anxiety and you don't understand why? I'll tell you why. Because if your parents were screwed up when you were 6 and you remembered that, trust me on this, they were screwed up when you were 3 and you don't remember it. So that's pretty easy. You want attachment issues? That happens from the day you're born. If your father picks you up and says, oh my God, I freaking wanted a son, and you're a girl, guess what? You feel that. And it's not like he said it once and it's okay. You know what I'm talking about. Mm-hmm. Okay. So, so these things hurt, and they hurt deep. Do you have panic attacks and you don't understand why? That's another one. Do you have somatic responses? In other words, from the body. In other words, asthma. Do you bite your nails? Do you pull your hair? Do you have trust issues? Fear of intimacy, fear of abandonment, people leaving you? Do you have a low-level depression or a low-level depression of dysthymia? You have things going, but you just
What's dysthymia?
It's a low-level depression where you can't put your finger on it, but you just never feel good. That's because you never really were validated as a child. Do you have an eating disorder? Are you overweight? You could be anorexic. Sometimes food or things, or drugs, by the way, if you're on substance abuse, drugs, most likely you have, I know for sure you have some type of trauma, right? Like,
that's a no-brainer.
By the way, Mary Tyler Moore died, and I'm going to say this because this happened in one of the shows. It was great. Rhoda said to her, I love food because it's the first thing that ever loved me back. I remember that when I was 10 years old, and I'll never forget it. That's why people like their drugs too, because it's consistent. It's the first thing that ever loved them back. Remember that I said that. That's important. How much time do we got? Not much? Okay. If you're emotionally dysregulated, I don't mean a little like most people are, but I mean up, down, up, down, up, down. If that's you, you have trauma. Do you have excessive anger? Have you set fire? I get clients like that. Yes, people that's just angry, just want to burn the place down. You'll hear people say that too. I just want to burn the place down. You know, that kind of thing. Okay, do you have low self-worth? Well, obviously that's the big one. That should have been the first one, right? Do you have emotional flashbacks? Is the situation that you're in is so small, but yet you blow up like it's a huge thing? Like the other day, you said, oh, my friend told me A, and you were like, oh my God, that person was so smart. I'm like, it drove me crazy because I told you the same thing 100 times, but you never heard me. That's what triggered me, is because I'm like, I wanted you to tell me I'm smart.
You are.
So
I told you
what does that tell you about my
conversation.
childhood, right?
He starts the conversation, he doesn't finish it. What I did say to him, I said, before you get excited, Joe.
Okay, let me go over this quick because I know John wants me out of here.
Yes.
Excessive inner and outer critic, meaning that you do one wrong thing, like, I go, oh, you jerk, you dropped your pen. Like, if you talk to yourself like that, that's not you talking. That's somebody in your family telling you that you're a loser. Mm-hmm. You know, that happens all the time. Are you excessively critical of other human beings? Do you have difficulty making boundaries with yourself and other people? Have you picked an abusive partner? Do you try to provoke abuse from a partner? Do you try to cause somebody to treat you bad so it confirms your worthlessness? Do you avoid relationships? No trust. Are you codependent? Do you have distorted black and white thinking? Suicidal thoughts? Do you have difficulty accepting criticism? I'm not kidding.
Stop it. He looks at me.
Is your reaction, well, because I know that one. We've done that on the air. Is your reaction out of proportion to an incident? I did over that. Inappropriate attachments. Somebody's too old. Somebody can buy you and pay the bill for heat. That's inappropriate. Like, okay, there's a lot of people that can afford the heat bill. Okay, do you have social anxiety? Are you afraid to talk to people? That'd be me. Still, it's all part of the trauma. There are a ton more, and we'll be back next week because this is a huge subject, and I hope you come back and listen to this because this is easily over $150 worth of therapy, and plus you don't have to drive to go to the therapist.
You don't have to really pay for it.
And you can watch it over.
You
again.
could sponsor our show.
And you could
we
sponsor
have
the
openings
show.
left still.
Yes.
That'd be awesome.
Thank you so much for watching. I am Joe Peroni. This is the Rise Above Show.
Heidi Mancini. I just zoned out for a second. I was thinking about something, sorry.